Hey guys, Andy here. So Google's phone production line has been quite an interesting sort of history to look back at. The Nexus devices were always kind of mid-range to budget, but they were intended for developers really, I think in some ways, with the stock Android experience. Then it seemed like they wanted to join the big boys and produce some really good hardware, and the Pixel range came out. But at the same time, they were never quite cutting edge. They were good camera and stock software, and that's kind of what they lived on. But the price rose as the hardware, and to be fair, the build quality rose as well. And then this year, they seem to have decided to step back into the mid-range, which I think is probably the right thing to do. I believe the mid-range is the place to be, and we can see lots of manufacturers doing similar things, which just means it's a really hotly sort of contested area with phones like the Poco F2 Pro from Xiaomi, the OnePlus Nord, even OnePlus's newer phone, the 8T, Samsung with their Galaxy S20 FE edition, or Fan Edition, sorry, in that same area. Even Apple with the iPhone SE 2020. People are seeing the benefit of that mid-range and seeing that actually, because I honestly think it's probably the right place to be. If you're buying a phone, you should be looking in that mid-range, which, again, what is mid-range? And I think right now it's from kind of £400 to 700, 750, somewhere around there. But I guess that's a bit of a moving target in some ways, almost dependent on who the manufacturer is and what their range normally is and what it goes up to. So with the Pixel 5 slipping back into that range, how good a device is it? And can it fight with those other phones in that area? Let's find out. So we'll start with the design of the phone. It's 151 grams. It is 8mm thick. It's got a glass front, which is Gorilla Glass 6, and it's got an aluminium black, yes, that's how you say it, and it's got an aluminium frame. As you can see, it's got a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor, which I found to be fast and reliable, and actually really quite handy while we're all wearing masks. The only issue I have with that is it's actually very low profile, it's very subtle, it's almost hard to know sometimes if your finger's on it. You just kind of have to have faith that, well, I know roughly where it should be. I'm just going to slap my finger on it and hope that it unlocks the phone, and generally you're right and it does unlock the phone. If you hit the sensor, I've not really had any issues, it does unlock pretty quick and reliably. It comes in just black and Sorter Sage, obviously, this being the Sorter Sage. The only issue I found with kind of the build quality, and on the whole the build quality is really good, I think it does feel nice to hold, is there's a funny vibration at the top end of the phone. Now I've tried to capture that using my good lens with good microphone, so I'll play a bit of footage and see if you can hear what I'm talking about. I just find it really odd, even when I put the device down on a table, I can kind of hear that little vibration, which previous Pixels have had. I think maybe it's to do with the optical image stabilization, because one version of optical image stabilization is literally a lens that floats around inside the kind of housing, I think, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost guessing. And maybe it's that when I don't know, it's kind of weird, a little off-putting. At the same time, if it's supposed to be there, I would sort of like, okay, that's what it is. So just want to be aware of, I suppose. The actual hardware is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G, which is a 7nm chipset. It's got an octa-core processor, an Adreno 620, 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage with the UFS 2.1 file system. So that's obviously the older file system. It was quite big news when devices, I think this year, came out with the UFS 3 file system. So a little weird. And it Geekbenches at 1545 as an average, which isn't great, but at the same time it's kind of in that mid-range area. I think my Pixel 4 still Geekbenches at about 2400, so it does seem quite odd that I'm moving from a more powerful phone down to a less powerful phone. Just for reference, Geekbench 4, it scored 5,848. What I did test, and there's a whole separate video on this, that you can game on the Pixel 5. So I spent a good, I don't know, 50 minutes or so gaming, different games. I put together a video just kind of you to see the performance. A lot of them I cranked the settings right up to maximum, and it was fine. It did get quite warm, and I found that this morning at the gym when I'm running Zwift, so I have Zwift running on my phone as I'm running on the running machine, and it kind of records my run in a virtual world. If you don't know what Zwift is, I have done a video on that somewhere. And again, it was quite warm at the end of that, which I wouldn't have thought was massively processor heavy, but it did warm up. Other things hardware-wise, it is IP68 dust and water resistant, which is 30 minutes at up to 1.5 meters, which does mean in our crappy UK weather, you don't have to worry so much if you're using your device out in the rain. It should be fine. The speaker is a little bit weird. So we've got a regular speaker down the bottom, and then we've got an under-screen speaker at the top. Now I'm going to play a bit of a podcast.
Well, obviously, Zhao, thank you for being on the show. I'm really looking forward to Tasky. Definitely let us know when that's up. As for me...
And I'll play a little bit of music.
I should have known you were bad news. From the bad boy demeanor and the cat. Liberties for like 6 days. Gold bottles, soul models.
And I think a lot of people would say that that is one of the weak points of the device. The speaker is quite tinny. It is a little echoey almost when you're on a phone call. And even worse, when you're on a phone call using the device as an actual phone, which I've got to be honest, I don't do very well, hardly ever. But again, that speaker, it sounds like the person's almost talking you through the old pot noodle pot with a bit of string. Again, I guess it's that echoey quality and the lack of bass. It isn't good. Having said that, when I use the device day to day, I don't really notice it. So I remember I woke up the other morning, I watched a couple of videos. I think I was watching a Marcus Brownlee video, and I wasn't thinking, oh, this speaker's shocking. It didn't really register. It passed my kettle test. I had my phone in my pocket while I was making coffee this morning. Turned the volume up on my watch, actually, on the phone, just to make sure it was and it wasn't even full volume. The kettle was boiling, no problems. I could hear the podcast. And in fact, as I drove home from the gym, I realised that from switching to headphones, getting into my car, it didn't connect to my car properly because I left the headphones connected. This one. And so when I pressed play on my watch to start the podcast playing again, it was just playing from the phone in my pocket. But actually I could hear it just fine. So yeah, it was a little bit tinny, but in some ways that helps it travel perhaps, I don't know. I drove all the way home just listening to the podcast from the phone in my pocket. So depends what you want from the speaker. It's not great. It is not great, but I'm fine. I do use the speaker quite a lot. I think it's not really an issue. On my test, I'm still on the speaker, sorry, it scored 85.5 decibels. So that's not actually that loud, but again, as you could hear then, I think it's plenty loud enough. So I've just explained, plenty loud enough. The screen itself is an OLED 90Hz HDR10. Let's turn dark mode off for a second. And actually I think it looks really nice. It's 6 inches, about 85.9% screen to body ratio. It is 2340 by 1080, which is a 19.5 by 9 ratio, and about 432 pixels per inch. As mentioned, it has Gorilla Glass 6, and as you would expect from an OLED screen, it does have the always-on display. I actually miss solely a little bit because of the always-on display. I quite like that it would be very dim, and as I got nearer or I reached for it, then it would light up knowing I was nearby. Obviously, we don't have that now in the Pixel 5. In my test, it scored 719 lumens, which is pretty good. And it means generally when you are out, if there is a bit of sunshine in the UK, that I could see the screen just fine. That's up there with all the other sort of regular sort of top-end devices, really. So no issues there. I did find it was a little slow in reacting to change in, so if I would take the phones, I've just been at the gym, phone's in my pocket, I finish a set, I pull it out to change the set, and it's really dim initially, and it takes 2 or 3 seconds before it realises and brightens the screen back up. So I'm almost already typing in the weight that I've used and before it's changing the let's see if we can replicate it. Yeah, I think you clearly saw that. That seems quite slow. I don't know that I've noticed that on other devices. I'm fairly sure I haven't. Not a big issue, just a little. I find it a little weird. It is a little annoying, I suppose, in some ways. If we move on to the cameras, The main lenses on the back, we have a 12 megapixel f1.7 regular wide angle, which is dual pixel phase detection autofocus and optical image stabilization. We have a 16 megapixel ultra wide, which is f2.2, so won't be as good in low light situations. And the selfie camera in the pinhole in the screen is 8 megapixel f2.0, again regular wide angle. I did do a whole separate video on that. I would suggest go and watch that if you want to know more about the cameras, but the main thing being just super consistent. It didn't really matter what I pointed at and took a picture. I didn't really have to tap on things to check focus was right. I didn't have to fiddle with exposure. You just pointed at something and take a picture. And I don't think, I mean, I took over 70, probably 80 or 90 photos. I don't think one of them was actually a bad photo that made me think, oh, I need to delete that. Low light, as always, really, really good. I still think it's the best low light camera you can get. Having said that, obviously, well, we've got the iPhone 12 on its way, which will be interesting. And I've not used all phones, and I don't compare them all that sort of in that much detail, but I do just think the Pixel, it's the consistency. It's consistently really good. So if cameras are important, this definitely is one to look at. And as I say, so I've done a separate video. Go and watch that if you want to know more about the camera. I'm not going to spend too much time because I did that whole separate video on it, or on them, I suppose. I don't normally mention, but I'm going to talk about connectivity because obviously this has 5G, and it's the first time I've had 5G that I can use in a phone. So I think some of my other devices have had 5G, but I didn't have a SIM that could make use of it. But I did upgrade my plan so that I have 5G. I can tell you, 5G is real, people. It is real. Some of the speeds you can get are insane. Having said that, so I posted a picture of the score that I'd got, and Raju, who runs his own YouTube channel, check it out in my featured channels, was saying he actually gets that speed in 4G sometimes in central London. And actually, getting those speeds is actually quite rare. So I got it at one point out the front of the place that I work. In buildings, I've not seen it that quick. At home, I don't even have 5G. I mean, I don't need it, I've got Wi-Fi. And actually, a lot of the time I get 5G and I do a speed test, and it's kind of 60 to 100 meg per second, which is not bad, but it's not those crazy high speeds that you're sort of hoping for with 5G. We're told, I think, that 5G is better in gatherings, in like, you go to Wembley to watch a game, and 5G should have a better chance that you still get a good speed. Obviously, in 2020, that's not really been something I've been able to test. And I've mentioned the sort of the speaker on calls. So again, for actual being a phone and data and things, yeah, good, but 5G I think still has quite a way to go. As far as the software, obviously it's going to be stock Android, which is just super slick and smooth. I've actually managed to stay on the stock launcher, which I don't normally do. I normally slap Nova Launcher straight on. But I've stayed on the stock launcher. It's a bit more customizable. You can change kind of what color and what shape your toggles are and things like that. And obviously we're running, I don't even know where I checked this, Android 11, and it's going to get the updates super quick. And again, that sort of, if anyone's worried about the lack of power, I don't think I've seen that anywhere. There was one time perhaps, I think I was swiping emails out of the way. I mean, I'm not quite sure. Oh, I swapped back to the last. It's generally, I think it's super smooth, no issues. Again, I don't think there's much point spending too more time on software, because if you're buying a Pixel, I think you know what you're getting with Android 11. Now, onto the battery, which I think is quite interesting. So it's a big step up from previous devices. This one is 4,080 milliamp hours, obviously non-removable LiPo battery. It will fast charge at 18 watts, which is okay. I mean, it's not crazy. It's not like your OnePlus 65 watt or whatever they're doing with the 8T, but for me, it's fine. It'll charge up in an hour and a half to 2 hours, no worries. Up to 12 watts, I think, on wireless charging. So again, that's some people really like wireless charging, and kind of that's a reason to get the 5G and not the 4A or something like that. So yeah, 12 watts wireless charging is fine. It will even reverse charging. It's called battery sharing. I think I've got it as an option somewhere here. There we go, battery share. That is then means I can put my Pixel Buds on the back of the phone and it will wirelessly charge the Pixel Buds. I'm not sure I'm ever going to need that, but it's kind of, I think it's an almost, well, why not? Perhaps I think the same sort of technology is involved, so okay. Now, this is what I find interesting. Some people are talking about they're getting 10 hours screen on time, which I'm not saying they're not, and I'm not saying that it's not possible. And let's have a look at my AccuBattery, that's what I always use. So my screen on time, 7 hours 22, and my combined use, almost 26 hours, which is good. It's a lot better than the Pixel 4, where I was having combined use of 17 or 18 hours. But that was showing at 29 hours before this morning. And this morning I've been to the gym, so I listen to music while I'm running. As I said, Zwift runs for kind of half an hour and it was getting very hot, so clearly that was quite processor intensive. And I've burnt through, so this is just today, I came off charge at 6:30 and we're now 11:30 and it's at 58%, which isn't a lot, but I mean, we've had an hour and 20 screen on time, and actually a lot of that screen off time, the device has still been busy. It's not had much of a rest in the sort of 5 hours or so that it's been on, because even with the screen off, it's Bluetoothing music to me and other stuff like that. So I think the Pixel 4 would have been down about 40% by now, so it's not that it's bad, it's just it's not magical, it's not like crazy amazing there are other devices. Having said that, in my test, so my hour-long test of playing a video for about 37 minutes and then reloading Twitter for sort of the other 23 for the hour, it still scored 95%, which has only been beaten by 2 devices, the Xiaomi A3 and the Realme X2 Pro. There are other devices, I think, on 95, but there's only 2 that have scored better. And both of those restrict apps and things to get that score. So I think the Pixel, given the stock experience and given the freedom that it does to still score that, is quite impressive. Interestingly as well, so when I first set the device up, I'd copied my old phone to the new phone using a USB Type-C cable, copied everything across, all the data, photos, messages, phone calls, blah, blah, blah. And I was getting, like, I mean, average battery life at best. And actually, that's when I did the test, so I should maybe run the test again now I've reset. So I basically factory reset, put new apps back on, and I've been getting much better battery life. So yeah, most people will say amazing battery life. I'm saying it's good battery life. But that's me. Everyone's. So I have everything turned on. I have all options that say, just be aware, this will worsen your battery life. Yeah, whatever. I want to use my device to the full. And different people won't do that. They'll have location services off or whatever, screen lowered down, whatever. I have got the refresh rate at 90 Hertz or whatever that display mode is that allows it to do that. Again, because I just have everything turned on. I'd rather use my device to its full. But it is good battery life. It is good battery life. So, what do we think then? The negatives, there is poor call quality. The speakers generally are not great, but as I said, do you know what? In use, I haven't really had an issue. The vibration is a funny thing, but I think that's to do with the camera, so you can kind of forgive it. I don't think it's a build quality issue. I think it's just a byproduct of having really good image stabilization, which I didn't mention, but it's in the separate video about the camera. I do actually miss Active Edge, the whole squeeze for Google Assistant. I used to use that quite a bit on my Pixel 4 rather than the Hey G, because I've got so many things that reply to Hey G. I'd rather, if I want to do it on my phone, I just want to be able to squeeze it. And as I mentioned, I do actually miss Soli. The positives though, it's such a smooth experience. The device generally is just so smooth to use. It really is a pleasure. You do have great battery life, and you probably will even get better than me. It is a lovely looking screen, definitely no issues with the screen, and it does have plenty of power. You know, as I've shown you can game on it, it's not a problem. And that camera just being so consistently really, really good, or great, or however you want to call it, you know, obviously a massive positive. I guess I'm left thinking, but is it an upgrade from the Pixel 4, given that the Pixel 4 has a lot of that, barring probably the battery life? The Pixel 4 has that and more, like Soli if you use it, and the Active Edge and all that sort of thing. Although it doesn't have the ultra-wide camera, there's some small bits. And I know a lot of people with the Pixel 4, well actually on forums it's interesting, there's a bit of a split. Some people are saying even their Pixel 2, I don't think it's an upgrade, I don't think I'm going to bother doing it. Some people on the forum are saying, yeah, I think it's a much better phone. It's a really interesting, and I can't answer that for you. I think in a previous video I've done like almost a grid. If you've got the Pixel 2, you want to upgrade. If you've got the 3, it depends if you want ultra-wide camera and a better battery. If you've got the 4, it depends on how you put them, you know. But because there's different factors that vary that would change that decision, I can't make that decision for you. So again, as I try to do with all my videos, I've given you all the information. Hopefully you can make that decision. Again, people always ask me in the comments, this or the I don't know, Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. I don't know. I've never used the FE. I don't know. And even if it was, my decision of if this is a better phone or is the phone for me is going to be very different to your decision. Excuse excuse me, it's going to be very different to your decision. So I can't make that decision. I just give you the information. So if I've done a review of the phone you want to compare against, I'm afraid you have to, having watched this, you'll have to go and watch that and then decide, I think that phone or I think this one, because I can't make that decision. Anyway, hopefully you found this interesting. I have done quite a bit of Pixel 5 content, so check out the playlist to see any of the videos about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I do read them all and I'll reply if necessary. But for now, my name's Andy, and I'll catch you all again soon.